Okay, mic test 1 2. Okay, mic test 1 2. All right, good. Just trying to make sure that the mic is working properly. As you guys know, and I've said before, I have to. Just trying to make sure that the mic is working. Okay, all right. Yeah, just have to monitor my stream. Okay. Um, like I said, we as content creator, particularly those of us that speak the truth, the things that affect us as Black people. When we speak about these things, for those of us that are on social media, whether we're popular or whether we're shadow banned, we always run into these issues. Okay, and that's because YouTube, Facebook, Instagram tend to push white people at the forefront, white content creator at the forefront, while negatively running a online warfare campaign, covert warfare campaign against those of us who, speak the truth, right? And so this is nothing new. I've talked about this before, all right? In this video of Let's Talk Live, we're going to talk about the negative outcomes of Black children raised in household run by single parent women, right? And this is response to a video that I watch. Okay, there are plenty of women, Black women, who talk about this, and what they have said is that when it comes to holding Black women, and I'll use the term Black women today. Guys, I like to use Negro women to create a distinction because it is a distinction. So when I say Black women, keep in mind that when I'm talking about who I'm talking about is Negro women, colonized mindset that look like us, right? In terms of our blackness, color wise, okay? Because we know not all skin folks are kinfolks. Okay. And so we got to acknowledge that, and let's dive into this. So I recently came across a video. Okay. Let me do this. Let's see. Right. So I recently came across a video. Right. Again, was titled "How the Black Family Was Colonized and How It Made You Hate Black Single Moms, Black in Britain." Now, this is from a young woman who, I guess, called Britain her home, lived there, possibly born there. But again, what this shows me is the length in which Black women, how far back they would reach, okay, in order to take some of the responsibility off of them. And I don't blame them totally. Okay, I've learned too much to lay the vast majority of the problems that Black men and women have, Negro women have, on them, to blame them 100%. Okay, I lay the vast blame of our conditioning, our negative conditioning, living in this Western societies, on white racism, institutionalized, ingrained white racism. And that is something that no one can are going to change my mind about. Okay, hold on a sec. Okay. There is too much information, too much research for me to say that it's Black women's fault or it's Black men's fault. I'm not going to do it to appease white people. I'm not going to do it because I'll get more subscribers, more likes, more advertisers, I simply will not do that. The one thing I've come to understand, and again, I have to thank a lot of our ancestors, people like Dr. John Henry Clark, Dr. Joseph Ben Jackman, Dr. Amos Wilson, Dr. Francis Cress Wilson, Wesson, Dr. Asa Hilliard, okay, and many others. All right. I would even say Dr. Anthony Brower, okay, uh, and I give him that respect because, uh, in the terms of archaeology, he is one of our scholars and elders living today who have done a tremendous job of not just writing books about our history, but actually doing the work, going out there in the field and doing the work. And for a lot of us who are growing up in, particularly the U.S. in the 80s and 90s, were totally oblivious to, these brilliant scholars among us, right? And that is not, again, not our fault. That is a concentrated war on the powers that be that seek to destroy our elders, who seek to minimize their influence and to discredit, okay, their intellectual and academic work, as well as work in the field of archaeology. Okay, and so it was during the late '90s to the early 2000s. Finding out about these elders, reading some of the things that they wrote, watching some of the lectures in which they have taught, and you kind of come to an awakening. Even as we were younger, right? We, particularly those of us who grew up in a very religious household. Okay, um, we are so in our bubble on in this belief, right, of Christianity or Islam, whatever. I'm not even gonna say Islam, but Christianity. Let's focus on Christianity because I think it is probably the most damaging religious tool used to um, destroy our minds, okay, to destroy our families, to destroy our communities, um, and as much as we like to say that Black people in America about the Black Church as a powerful institution, uh, not today, not within the past, I would say, 30 years. Okay, that the church has pivoted, okay, to more in line in the further degradation, the further destruction of the Black family, black young Black men and women in particular. Okay, and so like I said, I don't lay the blame on Black single mothers, but what I do say is that there is enough information out there. Okay, there have been enough research, okay, to look at the reality and see how, right, having communities in which the vast majority of women are the head of household with no man in the house, with when they have kids, no fathers in the house, how it leads to the negative outcome of the vast majority of those children. Now, I know some of us, our parents were like, well, particularly the women, well, I was a single mom and I'm a single mom. My kids are doing fine. Uh, you're just an outliner. Okay. And again, this comes back to our own individualistic, hyper individualistic mindset created on the system of white racism. Okay. Because we no longer believe in we as a community, we no longer believe in the I am my brother's keeper, I'm my sister's keeper, something that has been a societal staple within, African civilization. Okay, so listen up. Yeah. Um, so again, we tend to, ignore the reality. And because a lot of us don't know our history, like I always say, you can't look at Africa today, or countries in Africa, which is predominantly black, and use that as a model, right, of who African people really are. You have to look, uh, you have to go way back, okay, to which Europeans didn't have such a vast influence on the minds of African people in order to truly understand what our ancestors believe, how they think. I shouldn't say what they believe, but how they think, their culture, right, and how it influenced, right, the society in which they live in. Okay, so this video in particular, right, and the reason why again I have to come back to this topic is because the ignorance is staggering. The conditioning is masterful. Okay? To where you will have women, our women with 2 and 3 kids are choosing to be single because they love the life of fun and leisure. And they have children. Do they really care about their children? Do they really care about the next generation of the young men and women who look like us, who look like each other? Okay, so I'm not going to play this entire video. It's pretty long, but I do want to touch on certain things that she said is in this video. And again, fair use copyright disclaimer is used here. But I do we need to address certain things that she's saying, because women do not, particularly our women, the vast majority of them do not want to be held accountable for anything. They would rather be single with children, struggling, as opposed to learning how to cohabitate and respect their men. And respect is a big thing. And I tell women this all the time. Men require respect. If you have no respect for a man and you're in a relationship with him, doesn't matter how good he treats you, right? That man at some point is going to look for the, I'm not going to say the love, but he's going to look for attention elsewhere, whether that be sexual attention. And, you could say the same for women, but the reality is that most women don't break up their relationship because of emotional needs, even though they say that. The majority of women, who, particularly black women, who divorce their husband, is based primarily on financial reasons. Those that leave a divorce for emotional reason is because they're trying to turn their husband or their man into their gay best friend. But that's not who men are. We are not emotional beings. Though I would say within the past, particularly here in the United States, the past 30 years, we have become emotional. Again, I talk about other factors like lead poisoning in our community. That's a big reason, And so, like I said, I can't blame black women 100%. I can't blame black people 100%. Okay? Because the vast blame I laid at this racist society. Okay? And yes, this is a racist society. Okay, forget about what white people will tell you. Go look at the statistics. And then come back and tell me that this system, that this isn't, that the racism in the system isn't systematic and isn't ingrained. Okay? So let's go here. Let's play.
2021, more babies were born out of wedlock than intermarried families for the first time on record in England and Wales.
The sacredness of the single mother. And it's almost a sense.
Now, all right, listen to this. The government-owned research shows that children not living with both natural parents are more likely to have health and educational problems and a lot more likely to experience poverty. Now, again, we see Britain has a large population of black people. The same issue that we have here in the United States, they also have in Britain, in the black community, or in the community in which black people live. But not also that. Now what they're seeing, as they see here in the United States, is that the war they've waged on the black population has now become part of the issue and the problem with white population as well, though not as much as the black population. But now we see that there is a residue effect that when you do things to black people as a group of people within your own country and within their own country, that eventually it will trickle into the other communities. Okay? So
what we're doing is we're trying to beat up the single mom if we ever reach there.
So I come from a community.
So it says Blair, single moms piling up problems in Britain inner cities. So why they say inner cities? Because inner city is synonymous for places in which you have a lot of black people living in urban areas, or what they call cities, right? Large metropolitan cities. All right. It says also, again, this is the headline that she's putting up here. Boris Johnson said children of single mothers were ill-raised, ignorant, aggressive, and illegitimate in newly unearthed column. So again, the word ignorant and aggressive is used, illegitimate is used, right? Having children out of wedlock. And let me give you an example from my own experience. And I always say this, when I was in my early 20s, I got engaged, though I was raised mostly by my mom, right? I got engaged, but I wasn't ready for marriage. Okay? I wasn't even ready to be an adult. Okay? Because, when you have no male figure to assure you, to teach you, to raise you in a way in which would be beneficial to you as a man, okay, you have nothing to go by except for what you see on television. Your friends that you hang out with, they become the major influences on your behavior patterns, on the way you think. Okay, and I always say this, not every parent is going to raise their child like you raise your child. So if you're not careful in terms of who your child associate with, okay, you run a high risk of your children or your child getting into trouble, particularly with the law. Okay, and again, that's just one factor. And I always like to stress that there are many different factors that affect us negatively as individual and as a people. So we can never forget that. And I've never forgotten that. When I learn these things, again, you can go on my Facebook page and you see I don't post things that to me I consider to be ignorant. Okay? So you won't see me posting things like, when I hear people say, you're getting, what is it? Like, calmer and stuff like that. And and we used to say that all the time to each other, right? As black people, we say that to each other all the time. But how come we never tell white people that they're going to receive their karma? How come we don't tell white people right? That their action, they reap what they sow. Okay, how come they don't tell white people this? But we tell each other that. White people will tell us that, but we don't, say it back to them. Why? Anyone? Why? You know what I hear when I say to us as a people, as individual? Why are we always blaming each other, right? Why don't we put the blame where it belongs, right? Why don't we confront the white politicians who've created policies and laws to disenfranchise us, to redline our communities, to create substandard housing, to not remove the lead in old buildings or in old public housing buildings or in houses? Why don't we confront the racist landlords who, again, know that they had asbestos, they had lead used to build those houses and primarily rented out to black people, black families? You know what I hear? Okay, that's what I keep saying. Black people, we're living in the twilight zone. We don't want to believe it. Okay, welcome to the twilight zone. That's what we're living. Or if you want to say the Matrix, that's fine too. Okay, but again, we see these things directed towards the community in which the majority of people are black. Okay?
that routinely we gave up on marriage probably a century ago. But of course, we've had the single worst social outcomes for that entire century.
Father's not in the home. Where's fathers?
Well, this is a sensitive topic. If you're not black, think very carefully about how you engage with this video. You can stay.
You see, our women, particularly not our women, Nigerian women don't want to be judged on the fact that they have been conditioned and fail to realize that they have been conditioned to the point where they celebrate being a single mother. They view being a single mother as something that now you see young women aspire to be. Okay? They have created a rebellious mindset in the minds of Nigerian women. The very same women who are the most religious group of women, particularly in America, and I'm sure in the UK also, right? The very same Bible that talks about the institution of marriage, right? And the importance of being married before you have children. And what do you think they do when the pastors bring up these subjects in churches? What do you think they do? They literally get up and walk out. Because it's not something that they want to hear. And you have to, lay part of the blame with the mothers. Their mothers. Okay? Their aunts who've had negative experience or negative outcome with the men in their lives, including their daughter's fathers, their daughter's fathers, their sons' fathers. Okay? So in order to educate us, all right, she is going to break down history. And I mean, she took it way back. Okay? But guess what? See, and this is what negates all that. I shouldn't say all that she's saying, because a lot of it is relevant. Some of it is undeniably important. But still, when you look at the 60s, the early 70s, you had more black families, right, than single household, and I say black families, I mean the nuclear family, right? Mother, father, kids in the home. As opposed to what they're trying to redefine as families today, right? Single parent headed household, in which the mothers are head of household. So despite all of that, okay, when black people were really looking to each other and uniting with each other, you had more families, the nuclear families, together than you had, you know, household in which, you know, these so-called families are today. Okay?
I'm happy for you to chill and hang out here. I'm happy for you to watch this. But this is for black people. Thank you.
Okay. Well, I don't know what's going on with this video, but again, I am not surprised.
It's a less than
when it
ideal
comes to doing
situation
these
to raise a
things.
child in. Few would argue, particularly those raised in such households, that it is difficult, especially if you're black. Specifically, in this life, it is drummed into you that it is a failure, no, an act of cruelty even, and a downright irresponsible move to bring a child into this world alone. Nobody is more vilified for this.
But it is. I have to be honest with you, even coming from a single family household, you know, it is. But we don't seem to understand just how detrimental it is, even though the reality of it being detrimental, right, we see it every single day. And like I said, you know, I also considered other things that plays an even bigger factor in this. You know, environmental poisoning, healthcare costs, joblessness, particularly amongst black men, low pay of wages, primarily amongst black women. So even with all of that, okay, why do it? And I shouldn't even say why do it. I should just say, even with all of that, okay, that the seriousness of it don't play a part in our psyche. And again, a lot of it has to do with our environmental, the environmental warfare rage on our people. Okay? But here's what I tend to find that, particularly with today's modern women. Okay? Because in this video, she says that, you know, she's a mother and she's always been a mother, even before she had kids. And I take that as if, you know, she probably had other siblings, maybe younger than her. She probably was, and again, I'm just speculating, raised in the household where, you know, raised by her mom. And the mother left her to take care of her younger sibling. Okay? Now, growing up, for the first 10 years of my life in Grenada, when I was 6, 7 years old, my sister had to work. My mother came to the United States. I had to take care of my nieces and nephews, my brother and I. Okay, so imagine being, I shouldn't say 6, 7, maybe older than that. I was probably say maybe 8, 9 years old, right? You know, taking care of nieces and nephew, and particularly, I had a sister who was working. You know, I had an older brother who was working. You know, we had to take care of our nieces and nephew. I mean, there were other help, my brother's wife, but again, she had her own children. Okay, so we never, as adults, think how these things affect our children. When we put them in the position of parent when they are our parent, right? So we're taking care of our young siblings as if we are their parent, right? But again, we cannot negate and forget the circumstances, right? Mothers, they have to work. Okay, if they're not with the fathers probably also working, or if the father's not working, they're unemployed, looking for work. Okay, and of course we have those amongst us who engage in illegal activities, those of us amongst us who were engaging in drug use, right? So there's a lot of different factors, okay? But today, right? I'm speaking today, when we are, as I should say we are, but when black women are being told they're the most educated, they have the most degrees, then why are they not thinking like educated women? Okay? Despite all the degrees, all the, academic accolades, why are they still making these types of decision? But of course, they're going to lay it at the feet of the man. It's the black man's fault. Okay? It's funny how, white supremacists could blame us, women can blame us, but when we turn around and blame white supremacy, they all say, well, you can't blame white supremacy. It's like when women say they're looking for a leader, they're not looking for a leader. What they're looking for is a man that he can lead, but the only way he can lead is through his wallet. The minute we say, hey, you cannot wear that outside, you're my woman, or that's not going to happen, you're not wearing that, they will turn around and say that you're toxic, that they should be able to wear what they want to wear. And again, you don't see any other group of women behaving like that. Okay? And again, the reason why I'm doing this video is not to put our women down, but it's because I want them to understand that if the mindset doesn't change, that our children, future children, okay, their outcomes is going to be much worse than ours today. Our women are an intricate part of who we are as black men and as black people. And so until they develop a sense of true love of self, of who they are as being a black woman, right? And this is for Negropean women too. When you start to develop that self-love, you become a black woman. Okay? See, the colonized mind that's your identity, not your skin color. Okay? Your colonized mind, to me, is your identity, not your skin color. All right? So, again, our women, particularly Negropean women, not understanding the socio-dynamic outcomes of black men, right? And again, they will talk about black men ain't, SHIT, but they seem to forget in the last 35 years, the vast majority of black men were raised by black women in single parent household. Okay? And I told this young female, I call her female because, women would like to say we're not men because we may not do certain things or believe certain things. And so I use the word female because they don't do certain things and believe certain things. So a young female, I had to tell her, I said, you can say whatever you want, all right? But if you're not focused on nation building in the state in which we are today as a people, that our first priority should be on nation building. And nation building encompass being having a family where you have both parents in the household. If you're having issues, seek therapy. But our women are now the number one group of women who will jump ship. Okay? Whereas the men have become the captains in the relationship, where they're more want to work things out, and whereas the women are the ones that are committing mutiny. Okay?
And the black single mother, except for perhaps her children. Even the most progressive and well-read observer rarely contradicts. They may simply note the racialized nature or speak to it being unfair to stigmatize. And I can already feel some of you flexing your fingers right now to come in the comments and say that actually we need to face reality more, and that there is nothing wrong with some harsh home truths.
And that's true. But you see, again, look at how they fight against the reality. Look at how they are fighting against the truth.
Truth.
Yeah.
Truth. Okay, so
Now,
what if I told you the truth of how this all came to be? And what if I told you that your very understanding of the family itself has been colonized, and that
okay, so there you go now, right? She's talking about the whole idea of the family has been colonized. No, the whole idea of the family has not been colonized. Okay? Even in ancient Kemet, okay, there is plenty of evidence that shows you how important family, nuclear family, was to black people. Okay? In Kemet, ancient Kemet, which is the height of black civilization. Okay? Just as how Rome is to Europeans, just as how the Greeks are to Europeans, Kemet and Nubia, okay, are the epitome of ancient black excellence. Okay? And when you look at the family structure within those societies, though those societies were more matriarchal, right, in which, in terms of the successor of the king or the queen, lineage comes from the line of the matriarch, the mother. But still, within the family structure, right, the practice of the what they call traditional family today was the standard. Okay, this is why when we talk about the origination of the Trinity, that's how it was originally intended. It was that of the man, woman, and child. It wasn't two men and a woman, two women and a man, though the king may have multiple wives, but his first wife was the most important. Okay? So again, she is going to try to go through history and dig up what she deemed as acceptable for her in order to give themselves an out when it comes to the way how they've been conditioned, I should say, their life. They've been conditioned to live the type of life they are living today. Okay?
this is a defining influence on how we view black single mothers. You still with me? Okay, good. I'll start with this. If asked, how would you define family? Preferably a definition with a bit of consensus outside of yourself. All right, hold that thought. Let's have a quick look at a formal definition, one you'd see in a dictionary. 1. A social...
And actually, I love it when they do this because it just shows you that how narrow-minded, and as Dr. Ray Higgins would say, uh, they live in a circle. Okay, they live in a circle, and because they've been conditioned and programmed just to be and think, live and think in that circle or believe in that circle, they have no self-awareness. Because when she brings this up, again, she's in England, so in Britain, England, right? Who makes the rules, right? But the society. That's where you have societal norms, societal rules. If you are living in a society that in which the tradition and the definition of family, right, comes down to the nucleus family, where you have one wife, one husband, and children, right, or one child. Okay, now there are different kinds of family, but still the vast majority of families within those society are the traditional families. Okay, so even in Britain, they scorn at single mothers, whereas here in the United States, they also scorn at single mothers. But in the black community, single mothers are being celebrated, and they're not even celebrated in a way that's beneficial to them. They're not getting anything that's of beneficial, something that's tangible beneficially. It's all praises and symbolisms. Okay? Because the vast majority of black children raised in household headed by single black women, okay, live in poverty, or they are of the working poor or the working class. And again, the working class in the United States is the poverty class. Okay, let's get that straight. All right. Even in England. All right. So again, they are very, very proud of
Group consisting
the
of
single
parents
mother
and their offspring,
lifestyle.
the principal function of which is provision for its members. 2. One's wife or husband and one's children. 3. A group of persons related by blood, a group descended from a common ancestor. 4. All persons living together in one household. So that was a standard definition from a British English dictionary, and many other dictionaries and varieties of English basically say more or less the same thing. It's a default if it's in there, basically. Did your definition match, or was it different? Because actually, as much as it's framed as a default, it's actually a very specific family type. And if you know where this is going, then you'll know what I'm about to say. But just in case, that family type is what? The nuclear family, or the conjugal family. The man, the husband, the father leads and provides. The woman, the wife, the mother takes care of the family and home. The children obey their parents, emulate them, and continue the family name. You may now be thinking to yourself that I've been stating the obvious for the past couple of minutes, but that's kind of the point of this bit. The fact that
okay. Here's the irony, right? Because the images that she's showing is that of a white woman, a white man, and their children, white children, right? Think about this. Why didn't she show the black family, the black nuclear family? Why didn't she show the black man, the black woman, and the black children? Okay? We have to be intelligent enough. And when I say the word intelligent, I'm not talking about being smart. I'm not talking about your ability to remember things, to pass an academic examination. Okay? I'm talking about intelligence in, that you see, right? The reality, that you can identify factors within your reality that affects you, that you can go into any environment and be nimble, be adaptive, to engage in conversation, even if you don't know what the conversation is about. You have no idea, but you have the ability to listen, to ask, to want to learn, okay? To make decisions that is going to be more beneficial to you, the people around you, your family, right? You have emotional intelligence as well as sexual intelligence, being sexually disciplined. But when those things are taken away from you by factors that are beyond your control, okay, you have to understand that also. So, you know, for her to talk about how the black family was colonized and show the white men, white women, and their family as if somehow black people didn't have families like that is, again, you know, understand how they're moving, understand how they're not even logic, but how their belief system has been ingrained within their mind. Okay? Because the truth is, if you look at the statistics, the nuclear families are the families that are better off in every category within the society. But they never seem to talk about that. I want to acknowledge that. Okay? And as Dr. Amos Wilson always says, in order to conquer a group of people, you must create within them, particularly black people. He said, in order for white people to continue to rule over black people, they must create within us a dysfunctional mindset, a backwards way of thinking and believing. So therefore, we exhibit backwards behavior patterns that are detrimental, not just to us individually, but to us as people within the society, a group of people, and within our families.
It's considered an obvious description of the family, despite it not being the only one out there. How did this come to be? Well, what if I told you that this process is related to the stigma assigned to black single mothers, and that both were a product of imperialism and capitalism? Why don't we muse on that together, taking a look through history?
No, just, you see, when you look through true history, not the history you want to pick apart like white people do the history, right, in order to try and prove your point, which is disingenuous. Yeah, you might have some truth in there, but it's how you tell the truth, okay? Because we know in many African societies, even today, when, for the most part, in order for, okay, a man to marry a woman, okay, he has to seek the approval of her father, her family, right? And he has to pay what is called a dowry, right? And when that woman marries, once that father or family accept that dowry, then she marries that man. Now, if at any point in their marriage that woman is dissatisfied and go home, her parents will send her back to her husband. See, in Western society, they have made it easy for women to walk away from marriage, to destroy their family, destroy their children in the process of doing that, okay? And the man has no say. But women never seem to ask the question, why? Okay, because again, when you're getting all the benefits of a divorce, you know, after you've been married, whether it be short term or long term, you know, and the fact that women don't see any issue of making men homeless or men live harder lives, right, because of their decision, or watch their children fail in school watch the vast majority of the children have negative outcome. And I'm talking about particularly in the black community, right? Because we know within the white community, the divorce rate is not as high. Because still today, even though it's less than 60% of white people being married, as opposed to in the 60s, it was around closer to 70 something percent. They still have a majority on the marriage rate, whereas in the 60s, black families were married at a significant rate, well over 50%. And today, we're talking about half of, almost, I would say, in the 70s, I think it was over 60%, right? I know it's in the 60s. Whereas today, it is half of that. Okay? So, again, you know, the mindset of today's Negropean women is that they should not be judged for their poor decisions, but they will turn around and judge you as a black man, right? Or, you know, a Negropean man, I should say. You know, and they have no problem judging you, right? Judging me, right? So on Facebook, this one of my Facebook friends, a female, wrote that about men being bums, right? She's like, well, I don't know why women would want to date bums, right? And I'm saying to myself, you know, men have dated bums always when it comes to women. Men have dated women who worked in fast food sector. And I'm talking about men who have good jobs, you know, may have a nice apartment, car. I just say an apartment, not even nice apartment. It's an apartment, have their own car, such and such, making way more than she does, right? Men don't look at y'all as bums. Because you know women can be bums too, right? You know, this is the thing that they don't even understand, right? But the very same women who will work, you know, low-wage jobs are calling the men who are working and are paid more than they are. They call them bums. You know who they don't consider to be bums? Men who are making 6 figures and more. Okay? So I just kindly said to her, I said, listen, you know, men, we marry bums all the time. Women, female bums all the time. We don't have a problem. Because for men are more about the visual. So you can be a pretty bum. You can be a sexy bum. Right? If a man see you, he likes what he sees. And particularly if you have a feminine attitude, right? That man will most likely put a ring on it. Okay? Because that's all men have been asking for, is for women to be feminine. Right? Feminine, fit, agreeable, submissive, not in terms of, you know, trying to own you or tell you what to do, but in terms of letting the man be the man in the relationship. All right, so I don't want to get into that whole thing. Let's get back to the subject.
Patriarchy. It's one of those words. I wanted to get it out of the way early so that you could get a feel for the tone, you know? A word from Greek, broken down, it means rule of the father And in the traditional sense, it's actually pretty self-explanatory. The eldest father or male in the house rules over the rest of the family. More recently, another related form entered conventional usage in the 20th century, coming out of social sciences and feminist theory, describing societies where men generally have more power over everybody else. Whichever definition or combination thereof, patriarchy is the dominant structure on Earth. We are told that this is an inevitability based on innate biology, and it is one of the most pervasive forces on Earth, and yet it wasn't always like this, you know. Thousands of years ago, as agricultural practices and technology changed, so too did gender. Subsequent societies, like ancient Greece, were structurally patriarchal in the traditional sense. Aristotle, a powerful philosopher and generational misogynist, developed ideas around biological gender along with many of his peers at the time, and these ideas have been influential ever since. But why Aristotle? Why would you do this to us? Well,
and again, to show you that she knows nothing about ancient Africans, as you see, her references are based on the Greeks. But what she failed to mention is that Aristotle, okay, went to Kemet to learn the Kemetic mystery systems. And even in Kemet and Nubia, where you had queens that were ruling empires, right? When it comes to the normal societies, okay, men and women were equal, but they also had gender roles. You don't see men in ancient time breastfeeding babies, right? You and here's the thing, right? Is that in ancient Kemet, women were seen as the teachers. Okay? You had African empires ruled by women who, with these queens and these women, they were on the battlefield. But when they came home, they still went back to that gender role for the most part. So again, you know, I just want you guys to make the connection. And this is why it's important, because you have to know who you are. You have to know your people's history. And I'll say this. When white women go to work, they're on the battlefield in terms of, you know, work related, right? But when they come home, and again, this is the majority of them, they go back into their gender roles. But in our community, right? In our community, our women, when they're out in the workplace in their masculine role and they come home, they still have on that masculine. Now they still play that masculine role within the home. That's the difference. And again, like I said, not everyone, but if you look today, look at the majority, you'll understand and see what I'm talking about.
the rise of the concept of private wealth, really. On the back of those tech changes, people were producing a lot more and were now amassing much larger fortunes and diversifying and creating new industries. That tech changed the way labour worked, and many roles now suited men more. Men then were more likely to be the ones with the fortunes, which they wanted to keep for themselves and those they considered their kin. Kidnapping women from enemies, or even as a display of might, became a key indicator of a successful conquest.
Yeah, because men went to war. Right? Men have that natural ambitious drive to be a leader and want to expand their territory. Okay? I mean, for her to try to use that as to make some sort of point is ridiculous. It's ridiculous. But not also that, but we also see in African civilization, even when you had queens, they also, because of their role, okay, in which they learned not only from the patriarch, but from previous rulership, right? They also expanded their territory. But again, I'm talking about the queens they're a different social class. They are the ruling class. But you have to look within the society that they rule over. Okay? And you will see that women also, for the most part, were the ones who were cooking, handling the domestic chores, right? Men would do it too. Not to say men didn't. But she tried to make it seem like this gender role thing is something that just men push on women. Okay? Some things, yes. But for the most part, because of who we are, who we innately are as men and women, there's certain things that are within us naturally that make us, behave in ways in which, gender roles are defined by, for the most part. I hope I'm making sense.
In addition to one's wealth. But a woman's main role was now to provide unpaid labour in maintaining the home and keeping everybody fed, while he could focus solely on acquiring more assets. As amassing property...
And remember, she's speaking from a European standpoint. Okay?
Of all types became important, amassing children as property or as an extension of oneself and fortune, as well as the recipient of said fortune as a continuation of that self, also became a priority. And
okay, so basically she's saying that that having a lineage through your children, right, that somehow that's a bad thing. I mean, how did she think the world get populated? This is, when I watch what's her name? Shahada D or something like that. Oh no, I'm sorry, Shay Shahad. She talks about how women, and also Crimson Cure, how the way women think as opposed to the way a man think, right? Particularly today, is that their mindset is very chaotic. Okay, because a lot of the things they say or they express is in a chaotic nature, because that's who they are, right? And just what I'm like, okay, so what point is she trying to say here? Doesn't she understand the significance that in ancient times, the way things were? Again, these are ancient times, right? Different mindset, okay? And you also have to remember that for the most part, in certain societies, certain civilizations, and particularly within the African civilization, at the high time of Black African intelligence, okay, that our ancestors were highly intelligent, whereas Europeans, they were the savages, they were the barbarians. Okay? But because of this sanitized history that white people, white historians, racist historians and scholars have fed to us to sanitize ancient white societies, So again, as a black person, you know, I don't look at Europe as some standard in which I would go by in terms of trying to explain, you know, about the black family being colonized. If you want to talk about the black family being colonized, talk about it in the European conquest across Africa in the 17th century, right? The introduction of cattle slavery, right? The enslavement of African people, right? And then after the ending of slavery, right? Europeans still remaining in Africa, in African countries, whereas most African countries gained independence over the last 60, 70 years. Then you got to think about the systems put in place by the colonizers that when they leave, okay, that they still control the minds of the people. Okay? So we talk about, she talks about religion, right? And yes, religion was one of those tools, those weapons that continue to affect us as a people in a negative way. Okay? Because I'll tell you what, if she was to be born in a different society, a different country, outside of the Western Hemisphere, she wouldn't be saying this. See, but they don't ever think about those things. And it is because white supremacy have instilled within their mind that the idea that they think that they have the same kind of privilege as white women, even though statistically in every level shows that they don't. And the fact that they can't come to that realization, right? It just, again, shows you that you really shouldn't be listening to women. I shouldn't say we really shouldn't be listening to, but we need to listen to women like these with a critical mindset.
Crucially, children were a key source of labour and were in and of themselves another tool for production, just like the tech. But children are not grown on trees, they are grown in wombs, and wombs are not detached vessels, but they live inside people. So, women via their bodies became sites of production in and of themselves.
Yeah, but children used in labor in ancient time, it wasn't for, like we have anti-child labor laws here. Situation is different, right? This is how you would teach a child responsibility. Also, so when that child grows up in the era in which he or she would live in, and we're talking about ancient time here, that they become self-sufficient, right? So they can pass on their lineage, right? So they can create more people and expand the population, the society, right? Where people have to tend to the land in order to get food. Unlike today where, you still have people tending to the land, but when you look, you have machines now, doing a lot of the work. Whereas in ancient time, a lot of this work was done by hand. Okay? So, for example, when you have kids, right, a father in ancient time will take his son, will teach his son how to build or even build a house with his son as his son become an adult and have a wife, right? The father, the men in the community will get together to help build a house for this person's son and their wife. Okay, but she make it seem like if children were being birthed to be slaves.
For all that power men had, though, there was one thing that remained in the woman's favour, as exemplified in this Roman principle: Mater semper certa est, pater nunquam. The mother is always certain, the father is not.
See, and again, a colonized mind. Everything she is referencing, okay, has to do with European people. Okay.
The only thing anyone really had to go on to determine who the father was marriage. Marriage was the qualifier of paternity. In UK law, a child born to a married woman is automatically legally considered her husband's child. And I'm sure this is the case in many other jurisdictions as well. So, within patriarchy, the relationship between the genders essentially evolved from owning the body of a person, and by extension the person themselves, both to restrict access to them from everybody else and also to guarantee children.
No. Again, see, they want to keep on living that 3 or 4 lifestyle, even when they have offsprings, when they have children. She's not telling you the the negative effect of that behavior. They're just trying to come up with ways to convince other women, right, that they should be proud and continue to live this single mother lifestyle. Again, you got to watch what they say and do. Okay? Because again, and I'm going to move on from her video. I'll do a part 2 to this because there's a lot to comment on. Okay? But let's give a dose of reality. All right? Let's give a dose of reality, because it's important that we educate young women, okay, on this particular subject, that there are many negatives, right, to pass on this single parent mindset and lifestyle to future generations of women. And what they're doing is getting young women, right? Because there are a lot of young black women who understand what's going on. I subscribe to them on my YouTube channel. I watch them, and again, they understand not just from the point of them being women themselves, but also in a broader context of we as black people living under the system of white racism that is intentionally conditioning us to act, think, believe, and behave in ways that are detrimental to us. And most women today, most particularly Negro women today, they believe that leisure and fun is more important, right, than teaching their children the truth, of being actively involved in their education. Okay, so let's talk about this. First, we're going to talk about how, right? How, oops. Less children, less poverty, less prison, more college. What two parents mean for black and white children? Children who grow up in a household with only one biological parent are worse off, and on average, than children who grow up in a household with both of their biological parents, regardless of their parents' race or educational background. Sarah McLaughlan and Jerry Sandford, growing up with a single parent, what hurts, what helps. Princeton University sociologist Professor Sarah McLaughlan summarized the social scientific census about the importance of family structure for children with her colleague Gary Sandford. In this passage from their magisterial 1992 book, Growing Up with a Single Parent, parent. In recent years, many other scholars have come to similar conclusion, from Paul Amito to Penn State, to Isabel Sawhill at the Brookings Institute, to Melanie Westerman at UCLA. The consensus view has been that children are more likely to flourish in an intact two-parent family compared to children in single-parent or step families. But this consensus view is now being challenged by a new generation of scholarship and scholars. For instance, sociologist Christina Cross at Howard University recently published an op-ed. Harvard University recently published an op-ed in the New York Times entitled "The Myth of the Two-Parent Home," that contended living apart from a biological parent does not carry the same cost for black youth as for their white peers. In the Times and in another op-ed this month in the Harvard Gazette, she draws on her work indicating that black children are less affected by family structure on a number of educational outcomes, to make an argument that family structure is less consequential for black children. In recent years, other family scholars here and there have also called into question the idea that children do better in stable two-parent families. Okay, so if that was true, okay, and when you look at the statistics, right, because again, I talk about the creation of think tanks who have within those think tanks a different agenda for black people and a different agenda for white people, right? We know that these think tanks use a psychological process called nudging in order to steer society in a manner in which they want society to move on, right? But now you have them also steering black communities and black people, or black people who live in communities of color, scratch the word color, that live in communities in which the vast majority of black people live in, that we are being conditioned, right, in order to behave in a different manner from other groups of people. One particular implication of this revisionist line of research is that children may not benefit from having their father in the household. So again, go back and look at the statistics, right? Black children raised by their fathers tend to do better than black children raised by their mothers only. Particularly, that's it, not only, I'm sorry about that, and where the mother is the head of the household with no father in the house, right? And when the father is the head of the household with no mother in the house, the children do better. These are undeniably indisputable facts. Okay? And because they know, white people know how they condition us, particularly our women, and also trying to remove any sort of shame or stigma in the minds of Negropean women, they will put out these, romanticized version of the lies in order to get, Negropean women to believe it, right? It makes them feel good. Okay? So, one practical implication, okay, I should read that. So another implication is that the value of the two-parent family may be markedly different across racial lines, with black children less likely to benefit from such a family. Really? Why is that? Why is it that there is they're coming out with this came out with this other implication that black children benefit less likely from having a two-parent family? Okay. According to the Institute of Family Studies Research Brief, we investigate two questions. One, are black children more likely to flourish in an intact two-parent home compared to black children raised by single parents or in step families? We focus on these three subgroups because they are the largest family groups of American children today. Okay, understand this, right? Including African American children. And we answer this question by looking at three important outcomes: child poverty, college education, and incarceration. Okay? Two, is the association between family structure and child outcomes markedly different by race? Here we are focused on comparing white and black children in intact two-parent families to their peers in non-intact families, single parent families, step families, and other families. Our aim is to determine if the association is different from black children compared to white children on the three outcomes noted above. Family structure and black child outcomes. Today, 37% of black children are living in a home headed by their own two biological parents. 48% are living in a home headed by a single parent, and 4% are living in a step family with one biological parent and one non-biological parent, according to the March 2020 Current Population Survey. In this research brief, we explore how these three family structures are associated with child poverty, college graduation, incarceration. We draw on data from the American Community Survey, the ACS 2015-2019 5-year estimate, and the National Longitudinal Survey of Youth 1997 cohort. Specifically, YLSY 97 follows the lives of a national representative sample of American youth born between 1980 and 1984. The survey started in 1997 when the youth were ages 12 to 17. We used that wave that was surveyed in 2013, 2014, when the cohort was at least 28 years old. Okay, so here you see the percentage of children living with two parents in first marriages. The likelihood living in likely step parent family, living with single parent. All right, so in the black population, you have 13% living with two parents in first marriage. Okay, to the white is 5%. Living in likely step-parent family, for blacks is 33%. For whites is 13%. Living with single parent, for blacks it's 46%. For white, 33%. Figure 1 indicates that black children in homes headed by single parent are about 3.5 times more likely to be living in poverty compared to black children living with two parents in a first marriage. Our measure of intact family in the ACS, those in likely step families are approximately 2.5 times more likely to be poor. Moreover, after controlling the maternal education age, children age, and gender, we find that the odds of being poor for black children in intact families are 3.7 times higher than for black children in intact married families. Clearly, black children in stable, and the word stable here, I have to, stress, married families are better off financially. Figure 2 shows that college graduation is markedly more common among black young adults raised by their two biological parents. Our measure of intact family in the NLSY 97, specifically data from the NLSY 97, indicates young adults from intact family are almost twice as likely to graduate from college than their peers who grow up with single parents, and approximately 1.5 times more likely to have a college degree compared to peers in step family. So even when, let's say, that mother remarries, okay, kids are still better off with the two biological parents. Okay? So, after controlling the maternal education as well as young adults' gender, age, and AFQT scores, we find the odds of black young adults getting a college degree are almost, listen to this now, are almost 70% higher if they were raised by their own two parents. Right? Clearly, on average, young black adults from families headed by their mother and father are more likely to be flourishing educationally than black young adults from non-intact families. Now, there are going to be some women who have raised their children fairly well, and their children are doing well academically. But you have to look at the education of that woman. Okay? Not also that, but you also have to look at how she identifies herself as an intellect, and also her connection within the community that looks like her, right? Then it comes to her having the ability to be self-aware. Okay? And to also know her history, her people's history, black people's history, outside of the realm of, slavery. Okay? Now, here's figure 2. College and prison for black young adults by family structure. In the yellow, growing up with two bio parents. In the gray, with step parents. In the blue, with single parents. Graduated from college. All right? Black people, 28%. Graduated from college. Growing up with two biological parents, 28%. Graduated from college, 19%. With single parents, 15%. Ever been incarcerated? So for children growing up with two biological parents, it's 8%. For children growing up with their step parents, 14%. And for children with single parents, 14%. Now, look here. You see that children growing up with step parents, as well as children growing up with single parent, the percentage are higher. for those who've been incarcerated. Okay? Now, why is that? So when people say that the biological father don't play an intricate part in their children's lives, we know that that's not true. That even if when the mother remarried, okay, and it's, again, as what Kevin Samuel says, which is true, is that a man may marry a woman with kids, but those are not his kids. Okay? Those are not his kids. He may take on the responsibility of taking care of another man's kids, right? But he cannot discipline those children. Not also that, but if they ever get a divorce, he has no rights to those children. So men, and again, I'm not saying all, okay, I'm just going by the statistical data, is that most men don't really see their stepchildren as their own. So they will not love them as if, they may love them, but they won't love them as if they were their own. Okay? All right. So there is also a clear connection between family structure and incarceration of black young adults. Black young adults who grew up in a single parent home are about 1.8 times more likely to have spent time in prison or jail by their late 20s compared to their peers from a home headed by two biological parents. Those from step families are also more likely to have been incarcerated. In a varied context with the same control noted above, young black adults in non-intact homes have about 2 times the odds of having ever been incarcerated compared to their peers in intact homes. Because patterns in college completion, completion and incarceration varies by gender, we also explore the link between family structure and these two outcomes separately for young black men and women. Figure 3 indicates that young black men from an intact two-parent family are much more likely to graduate from college than their peers raised by single-parent and step families. And their incarceration rate is also much lower, 14% versus 24% for single parents and 26% for step families. A similar pattern applies to young black women as well. More than 1/3 of young black women, 36% from intact families, have a college degree by their late 20s and share among black women raised by a single parent, and 18% and almost 25% is among step families is 25%. And here also, you see the college and prison for young black men and women by family structure. Okay, so again, growing up with two biological parents, this is from graduate from college, you got 21%. With step parent, 12%. With single parent, 12%. For those young black men who's been incarcerated, it's 14% growing up with two biological parents, and 26% when it's with step parent, 24% when it's single parent. Young black women, okay, graduated from college, growing up with two biological parents, 36%. With step parents, 25%. And look at this, right? When growing up with a single parent, okay, and most likely we're talking about women being the head of the household in the single parent, we're talking about 18%. All right. Now, who have ever been incarcerated, growing up with two biological parents, 2%, growing up with a step parent, 1%, and growing up with single parent, 4%. Now, it's odd that you would have a higher percentage rate of young women who are incarcerated or have been incarcerated coming from homes where you have two biological parents, that you have a larger number as opposed to those growing up with step parents. But again, when it comes to the single parent, the number is greater. Okay. And you guys can read the rest of this article. It's from the IF Institute, ifstudies.org, the Institute for Family Studies. All right. Okay. I'm going to have to do a part 2 on this because, we need to break this down to truly change the narrative that is being conditioned into the vast majority of our people's mind, and particularly our women. And then they are teaching this same dysfunctional thinking and behavior to their daughters, their sons. All right. And I keep saying that what these white supremacists are doing is creating within the black community, or the community which black people live in, a patriarch system, right? One of the, as a matter of fact, I think I'm going to start off the part 2 of this video with 2 videos called Why It Sucks to Be a Male Hyena, which I'm going to break down. And shout out to Chantel for this video that she played on one of her YouTube shows, and I was blown away. All right. But there's another video that she didn't show, which I'm gonna play also. Okay. And how you can see the correlation between how the black communities in which black people live in, how it's operating under this gynocracy. Okay. So I will talk to you guys on the next video.